I'm Ark. I use they, them pronouns or any pronouns as long as they're interchangeable. I am COVID conscious, COVID cautious. I'm a COVID cautious cutie. A lot of us have different stories. I have not really shared mine. I want to talk about my COVID story. I am just going to go through the timeline from 2020. It's pretty common COVID story, I think, for a lot of people. Mine has been mostly alone from 22 to 26, which is quite painful, but this is my story. So in 2020, I was just finishing up my undergraduate degree where I was getting a Bachelor of Social Work. I was living with one roommate at the time. I was doing an in-person internship, and in March 2020, we got this email saying that everything was going to close down for the foreseeable future, of course. I still got the credits and I still was able to finish my internship and graduate on time. During this 2-week pseudo lockdown, my roommate and I mostly stayed home for those 2 weeks. We played video games together. I was mostly smoking and drinking. We ended up making signs in our windows and connecting with the neighbors across the parking lot. Thankfully, they were really nice people. I'm very grateful for that because it could have ended so badly. And then in May of 2020, I decided to go and hang out with somebody for the first time after 2 weeks. I immediately got COVID and I was bedbound for 2 months, May and June. And every friend that I had at the time stopped talking to me, and a lot of them actually blamed me for it. They said, "This is what you get for going out. You deserve this." The thing is, the people who said that to me were not taking precautions from the start. That really showed me what they thought of me and disability and disabled people. And although I was disabled the majority of my life, and in 2016 my disabilities really genuinely started to disable me fully, I learned a different type of abandonment in 2020 than I got in 2016 and earlier in life. I lived in a red state, a more conservative right-wing state at the time, and I was in a more progressive city. But my lockdown in my area was 2 weeks. And then everything went back to normal. I never had a real lockdown after that. I stayed home. My roommate did not. And my roommate ended up going out to party. It's interesting because my roommate was never a partier until this one time during the beginning of COVID when they probably shouldn't have been going out. That's when they became a party animal. So I was bedbound in May and June. No hospitals or doctors would take me in because I was young. I had just turned 22. I ended up having to hire people who I thought were my friends to drop off groceries for me at my doorstep. We would not come in contact at all, but they actually would not help me unless I paid them, which honestly destroyed me. I lost one of my best friends because they didn't want to deal with me being disabled. It was heartbreaking. Flash forward a couple months, I got accepted into grad school across the country. It was a little bit hybrid, which is why I was able to move across the country. And I also wanted to get out of the area kind of close to where I grew up and went to college. I was still masking, I was still isolating, but I did stay at a hotel midway through my move across the country. And I either got COVID a second time or that's when my long COVID hit because I never recovered for about a year and a half. I had terrible symptoms where it was incredibly hard for me to breathe all the time. I could not walk up 3 flights of stairs to go to my apartment anymore when I used to be decently good at that. Constant chest pains and wheezing. I would get into these horrible coughing fits to the point where I would throw up and nearly pass out. That's when I realized that my chronic smoking was also terribly bad on me. Hey, former pothead. So when I did quit, a lot of my symptoms did get better. However, a lot of them still lingered. Body aches, muscle weakness, and fatigue is something that wasn't new to me, but it was immensely worse after this potentially second infection. I was wearing cloth masks at the time. I did have an internship for grad school that was hybrid, so I would occasionally see them there. We would all mask up. I would hang out with some people from school outside. We would go hiking together. We would wear masks. After I graduated, I stayed home and I was jobless for 3 months, and I was still recovering from the burnout of being in grad school. Fun fact, I got diagnosed with ADHD literally 3 weeks before I graduated my graduate program. which would have really fucking helped several years earlier. Where I was living at the time was actually pretty abusive. My neighbors would literally harass me all the time because I wore a mask everywhere, and I used to put up a sign like "mask up" on my door because I didn't understand safety. So people would constantly like stalk me, people would harass me, follow me home, threaten me. I had like shopping carts thrown into me, people sneezed on me, coughed on me, spat on me. People would laugh at me all the time, just like in my neighborhood. It was really bad. So I decided I was going to flee, and I drove across the country back to where I grew up, and I stayed there for about 3 months, but it was even more abusive than it was when I was a kid. None of them took COVID precautions, and when we did have a scare, they blamed me. It was very harmful, so I ended up fleeing back, and thankfully I was able to actually get a job where they required masks on shift, and they required vaccine status to be proven, which was so relieving for me. I felt like, oh my God, I'm seen, I'm heard. It was awesome. Until one day the mandate for that county was over, and they said we're no longer requiring it, and I was the only one left masking again, and I sobbed. For that same job, we had an employee peer review where one of my peers said that I shouldn't be working there because I was too concerned with cleanliness, and that I should just stay home, and maybe that job wasn't a good fit for me. I told my boss that the comment was ableist, and my boss said, "How?" And when I explained, like, I have a right to be here just as everybody else, and in fact, my virus mitigation doesn't negatively impact anyone. In fact, it actually is preventing a lot of us from getting sick, probably, because I'm cleaning the place up. So my boss then said, "I guess I can see, like, what you mean by that. Yeah, I'm sorry I left that comment in, I guess." It was just kind of like a, okay, whatever, like kind of brushing off. I had to pull over on the expressway because I couldn't see. I was sobbing. I eventually left that job for a different one that was way worse. No one at that job took COVID precautions except for me and like 2 other people. And then after people started hating on me for it, one of them stopped altogether because they didn't want to take the heat, which honestly broke my heart, because in that moment we needed more people to mask, not less. Since I left that job, I can't help but wonder sometimes if that one more person who was masking is still doing it, or if they stopped also. That goes to show that, like, again, the way that we go about activism and advocacy, we have to walk on eggshells, we have to tiptoe, and we have to perfectly tailor our words. And me as a white person, I have to do this even less than people of color, especially in a predominantly white workspace like a nonprofit social work organization. And it just goes to show that if you don't go about it the right way, you can end up causing more harm even though you're trying to help people. So that's like a really difficult line for me to walk, and it didn't end well. And I'm not proud of it. I'm actually very hurt by it. I'm hurt by the way that I approached it, and I'm hurt by the way that other people approached it as well and reacted to it. At that job, people would harass me and bully me in the office regularly for masking. One day, someone walked across the entire office suite and blew their nose literally like a foot in front of me, smiling at me the entire time. And I stood up for myself and I said, "Can you not do that in front of me? You have the entire office. In fact, you even have your own desk. Why did you come over here to do it?" And they said, "Sorry." And they smiled at me and laughed in my face and walked away. My supervisor, who literally walks this world with rose-colored glasses, told me that I was overreacting. That's not what they meant. There's no way they could have done anything mean like that. I just need to brush it off. I'm overreacting. That was gaslighting. There was another time where someone there made fun of me for wearing a respirator, where they put a paper over their face and they said, "Does this work?" And I said no. And then they took it down and they put their hand over their face and they were snickering and they said, "What about this? Isn't it the same?" When I stood up for myself in that moment, I had a report against me. The cherry on top was really when we had like a big staff meeting and they went around asking everybody what we needed from the staff. And I said, I need people to mask when they're sick. I had multiple reports against me after that, even though my boss had literally applauded me for speaking so eloquently and educating them in a nice way. I still couldn't get it right. No matter what, because at that point, it really had nothing to do with the way that I approached it. It was the fact that I was even mentioning the topic at all. Do not mention the bleeding, screaming elephant in the room when everybody else has glasses on and earplugs in, and they do not want anything to do with it, even if they're the ones stabbing it. I was told that they didn't want to approach me anymore because they didn't want me thinking that they were ableist. So they were more afraid of seeming ableist than actually being ableist, which is a big reason why I hate the USA social work system. Because this is not the first time I've heard it, and it won't be the last. So I did leave that job, and I was struggling for like 7 months after that. But that time is when I got on TikTok. That is when I joined COVID Conscious TikTok. COVID Conscious TikTok changed my life. And for all of you who are here from there, I want to say so much. Literally, thank you so much. You have probably contributed to making my day one of these days the past year and a half. I'm so grateful for all of you. And this is something people might not know about me, but I don't like research. I'm sorry. I've tried to get into it. I can't. With my unmedicated ADHD and dyslexia, and both of those having gotten so much worse the past several years after long COVID, I cannot read research, and I really can't digest it. So I am so immensely grateful to everybody that reads the research and reformulates it into a digestible content form, because it helps people like me who are COVID conscious. It helps other people who aren't. I'm just so grateful for it. Even though the president at the time declared the pandemic emergency over, I knew that that was just not the case. It didn't make sense to me that literally yesterday we were in this raging, deadly, lethal global pandemic, and the next day the president's just go to work, fuck it, let's just pretend it's fine. I never believed that. I know a lot of people desperately wanted to believe that, so the moment that was said, they did believe it, but I never believed it, and quite honestly, I never even looked into it. I just knew that it wasn't right. Flash forward again, after staying unemployed, I did get another job. It was corporate. Out of probably, I want to say there's got to be more than 2,000 people in that building. I was the only one masking. It was isolating. And then I got another job that was back in social work, and I really can't say anything about it for legal purposes, for the safety of myself. But I will say that it was really unpleasant, and I was encouraged to stand up for myself. And the moment I did, I started getting reports against me. And ultimately now I am unemployed. We're not going to turn this into an ICU ward. People were not going to listen to me. They were not susceptible to hearing what I had to say about COVID and virus mitigation. A lot of people really cannot cope with the concept of potentially having to continue masking in public, or even just when you're sick. I personally do believe, and I know the majority of the COVID conscious community believes, that wearing a respirator when you are sick and you have to go around people is the bare minimum. Even if you're never going to wear a respirator ever again, the least you can do is when you're sick. And for people to just laugh at me and say they have no idea, when I kind of wonder, did people just plug themselves out of the matrix for all of 2020 and 2021, and they just plug themselves back in, and they have no recollection of anyone masking or any of the giant mask discussions that we had in 2020? Because I was there and I remember it, and I was barely online at the time. I could literally roll my eyes so hard that I would have a headache, and it would still not express how frustrated I am with the world about this, especially the USA. So, flash forward to today. It's still not midnight, so I guess it's still Friday, November 15th, 2024. And I am still COVID conscious, and I'm not going to stop. The whole pandemic of COVID-19 is getting worse, and we're seeing things get worse with H5N1, and we have all of these food outbreaks like listeria. I'm not going to stop masking in public. I'm just not. I don't see a reason to do so. In summary, got COVID in 2020, bedbound, moved, probably got COVID again, got long COVID for a year and a half, have never been the same, never stopped masking because I realized it didn't make sense that the pandemic was magically over. I never really paid attention to the research, but when things got really bad for me at my job, getting pushed out for wearing a mask and advocating for it, I joined COVID Conscious TikTok, and here I am. So that is pretty much it. I know a lot of us have very similar stories. Like I said, mine is not really different than a lot of people's. Mine is pretty much the same. It can be boring at times. That's why I don't really talk about it. I don't know if anyone's really interested in hearing about my life. I have so many more stories than COVID, honestly. I want to process it, and maybe me processing it can help other people realize that I'm just a human being. Social media can lead for like parasocial relationships, and it can encourage that. It's been hard for me to unlearn parasocial relationships. I know people have had parasocial relationships with me, which is silly to me because I don't have a lot of followers, but it doesn't matter. I've realized it's really just people that I've interacted with time and time again, people who might look up to me because of some of my takes and some of my videos, that like the moment people have found out that maybe my precautions are different than theirs, I know it's let people down. And I just want to say, COVID consciousness, COVID cautiousness, it's an umbrella. It's an umbrella term for people who are still taking some kind of regular precaution during the COVID-19 pandemic, the ongoing pandemic. It's different for everybody. There are some people who wear respirators and they still go to concerts and restaurants. And there are other people who stay home entirely and they get everything delivered and they don't see anybody. And I am somewhere in the middle because I have different circumstances, and that's okay. So there's actually something on my Instagram. This is why I hate Instagram. Sorry to anyone who's come from Instagram. It's really not personal. The comments on Instagram are so mean. There's a different vibe on Instagram I don't know how to describe. So I did make like a boundaries highlight on my Instagram because people were just getting out of hand, which is wild because I have like 250 followers. Why were people getting out of hand? I don't know. But there is one on there that I wrote saying, I'll read it to you. This is not a COVID info page. I am COVID conscious, but I do not make solely COVID conscious content. There are a plethora of people, beautiful people, might I add. I love you all in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not romantically, maybe platonically. People whose whole pages are dedicated to proper C19 education, insisting I make videos about XYZ because you want to talk about it but won't do so on your own page will likely result in a block. Someone did that to me. Someone came into my DMs and said, you need to talk about this, about COVID. And I was like, who are you? Like, what do you, me? You gonna pay me for that? Because I would have to do a lot of research because I'm not a researcher. There are so many other people who have made videos about that already. Why me? And I would not be confident enough to know if I was researching the proper things and relaying it properly. That's why I refer to other people. Not everybody should speak up about everything, and that's okay. And I think it makes me stronger in my own skills to know my weaknesses too. And that is one of them. And that's okay. Continuing, my COVID precautions may look different than yours due to differing circumstances in my personal life. CC is an umbrella, not all or nothing. Insist I've given up because of our differing practices will result in me distancing myself or blocking you. So, Instagram is the only app that I've had to make boundaries like that on. I will just leave that there. I do have to work in person. There are not remote options near me that pay enough for me to sustain myself, and I try to sustain myself fairly cheaply. And at those jobs, I have taken off my respirator to eat snacks and to drink water so that I don't die. Because I also have certain things in my body where I do need to drink. I'll show you. I drink a half gallon of water a day when I'm working. And when I don't drink this a day, it severely messes up my body. Like, I do have to do that. And it doesn't make me a terrible person. Like, one time I did take a selfie at work with my respirator off. It didn't make me a terrible person. It doesn't suddenly mean that I'm going to stop all precautions whatsoever. And yes, a selfie is a ridiculous thing to risk that over. At the time, I was the only one in the building the whole day, so I felt decent about it. I had air purifiers running, windows open. I know that that's silly. I know. But in that moment, that is one thing that I did for myself because I wanted it, not because I needed it. And there are so many other situations where I know people are doing that too. Like sometimes if you don't eat fast food because of COVID, sometimes people might just go get a burger and they, in that moment, can enjoy that burger and feel fine. I also do not go anywhere. I have been doing like grocery pickup for the past 4 years. The only reason in the past couple months I've done in-person grocery shopping is because all of my grocery accounts do not recognize my card. They label it as fraud every single time I try to order a grocery pickup or a delivery. But I try my best to go like really early in the morning when the store first opens, when there's like nobody. Sometimes I will run into a store in person and I'll wear my N95 damn proud and I'll come home. I'll take all my clothes off and put them in the dirty laundry and I will immediately shower. I didn't come here to fuck around, to quote Jenna Marbles. Anyway, with that being said, I guess that's my COVID story so far. If you have any questions or you want to talk to me about it, feel free to leave a comment. If you watched this far, I want to say thank you. I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a good day, night, week, weekend, whenever it is, whenever you're watching this. Thank you. Goodbye.